The Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. With your hosts, Joe Bond.
You're awful.
And AJ Applegarth.
It's Sin Shu Chu. It's a mouthful.
All right. Welcome to the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. With me, wearing a baseball jersey for a football show, is AJ Applegarth. What's up, man?
There's a method to my madness, like always.
Sure about that?
We're talking best ball today, and the Philadelphia Phillies are playing their best ball all year right now with their new manager. Thank sweet baby Jesus that Joe Girardi is no longer running this team. Yeah. So I'm doing that. And I also need to give a shout out to our Hokies and their, both the softball and baseball teams. The softball's season got cut a little short, but they were in the hunt there. And men's team is heading into possibly getting into the College World Series after this weekend. See what happens.
Yeah, they're playing really good ball, man. That offense was on fire, dude. That was awesome. That was pretty good. But all right, so tonight we're going to be covering some best ball strategies. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. But before we bring on our guests, let's do our beer of the week.
Beer.
What you got, man?
I am working through the rest of the Stone pack that I bought and doing the Stone Delicious IPA.
That's a good one, man. I like
As
it.
a starter. Yeah, 7.7 ABV, citrusy lemon drop hops, tropical El Dorado hops, and gluten reduced. So whatever that means, I'm into it.
All right. So I may not even finish this one during the show, but it is the Dogfish 120. Oh. So if anybody knows this beer, it's roughly about they think it's 18%. They have no idea.
Like,
I think they're all sort of different, by the way. So like this could be more, this could be slightly less. Whatever the batch came out as is what they bottled. But this was a birthday gift to myself when the wife and kids were away, and I was like, yes, sir, I'm buying this. So bottoms up.
Speaking of birthday gifts, you have completely failed to mention the beers that I left in your fridge for you. Did you just not realize that I'm the one who left them for you?
I haven't gotten to them yet. We haven't had any shows since my birthday, except for one.
Maybe
they're coming. I promise. They're being stashed away.
All right.
For the rest of the summer shows. We got it. I got you.
There was no comments, no nothing, no like. Hey,
I said thank you before you left my house that night.
Other than that, I mean,
Jesus.
Cool. Everybody can say thank you right away.
Oh my gosh.
It's the after fact that can. All right. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk some ball. Bet.
All right, let's bring on our guests so they don't hear us bickering anymore like a married couple. Preston White is over here, and then Davis Pang. Preston, what's going on tonight, man?
Doing well. Ready to talk some best ball.
All right, good stuff, man. Looking forward to it. And Davis, how you doing tonight, man? You ready to roll?
Oh, yeah, you know it. Just completing my last 80 drafts, and I'll be ready to go.
Good stuff. All right, so we're gonna talk just quick first thing here. You know, we're gonna talk some of the different platforms that you can play best ball on. You know, obviously there's Underdog, there's RT Sports, FanDuel, there's DK, there's all these things. So real quick, Preston, like give us a couple differences between all these sites.
Yeah, so kind of starting with Underdog, I guess the first thing that kind of distinguishes Underdog is that it's half PPR. Most of the other sites are full PPR. In addition, Underdog takes the sort of playoff format for determining the winner. So the first 14 weeks you're playing against the 11 other teams you drafted against, and then from then on out, it's a 1 week elimination playoff type progression till you get to the finals in week 17. But whereas you have a format like Drafters, which is one of the full PPR formats, Drafters actually uses a sort of highest scoring overall team type concept for the winner. So once you draft your team, you're no longer just a part of your 11 other drafters division for the entire length of the season. It's just every team for themselves. Highest overall score on the season is how you determine each place. The other main formats like DraftKings actually takes a very similar format to Underdog with the playoff structure, but DraftKings, in addition to being full PPR, also has their sort of bonus scoring that they have for DFS, so they give additional points to quarterbacks throwing over 300 yards, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends getting over 100 receiving or rushing yards. And then in addition, RTS is the other main one. RTS uses full PPR, but it's also only a 10-team draft. Kind of the main difference with RTS2, which is it's interesting but unique. They have a sort of hybrid approach where they have payouts for first and second place within the 10 teams you draft against. But at the same time, your overall score for the season also determines like a separate prize pool. So you kind of have like a mix between drafters and a normal sort of sit and go type approach for RTS.
Cool. Yeah, it was a fantastic breakdown. That's I think most of it. Davis, I can't tell if you're actually there, man. You are frozen.
And frozen?
You are totally frozen. You changed your
Right.
background and it froze everything on you. But
You're back,
we can hear you.
You have me
Maybe.
out, if you don't mind.
Yeah, just real quick before you go, like, you got anything to add to that, and then we'll jump into the next, and you can come in and come out.
Preston kind of head to head. I would say that the one thing that I think DK separates as well, as he pointed out, is obviously the PPR from UD, but the bonuses. I think the bonuses is a very big portion of DK that it's hard to calculate, right? 300 yards throwing, over 100 yards receiving, 100 yards rushing. I think they give bonuses for all those kind of things, and certain players, and we know those home run hitters, like they can do that multiple times, and some players will never do it even once. And I think that changes a big portion to who you want to draft. Something that I don't have to worry about when I do UD or when I do RTS Sports. Like, I'm not worried about, oh, will this guy get me bonuses? So it's a big thing that I think is overlooked a little bit here and there.
And where do you play most of your best ball on?
I mostly play on UD. Picking up RTS Sports this year. I want to try PPR format. A little bit of drafters because it's about similar.
Okay.
Competition can be kind of stiff, though. Those guys that have been on those formats a long time really know how to do the system there. And it's a lot different because there is no eliminations that I'm used to doing at UD. It's about being the best, like the best drafter. And, and I drafted really good teams last year that I was like, cool, this might finish in the top, high bracket. I think I had a team that almost finished 1,900 points, and which was really, really high. The average, I think, was 17. And I didn't even come close. Some guy drafted, I think, like a 2,100 point team. I'm just like, what is going on? Like, right? Like, that's a gap. That's a 400 point gap between the average guy who made it versus the average person, like the number one person, right? Which UD is paying this year. They're paying $1 million for that.
Yeah. All right. Let me. I'll let you bounce real quick, and hopefully you can come back in, and we'll have that figured out. But Preston, where do you typically play most of yours?
Yeah, Underdog would definitely be my preference. I think they just have the overall best interface and whatnot. It makes it super easy to draft, whether you're on a computer or on your phone. And so I would definitely say Underdog, but I did a lot of drafters last year. I don't think I'm the biggest fan of the kind of overall highest scoring points on the season. So I kind of like how RTS was able to, do better within my own little, I guess, draft lobby, in addition to having the chance at the overall highest scoring prizes. So probably might do a little more on RTS this year just to kind of get that combination of like a floor play out with a ceiling type payout. So Underdog is definitely my preference though.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to let you all know, we're all going to be playing on RT Sports this summer. So we're going to be promoting whatever league that we are joining on Twitter. So if you want to draft with us, follow all of our Twitter accounts. They're in our little handle here. I'm at F6P Joe, at Pangs Pick FF, at FF_engineer_, and they're also in the show notes. So yeah, if you want to draft with us, just keep tabs on our Twitter accounts, and you can play with us there. And of course, we've got to promote our Underdog. Got a promo code 6PACK, all spelled out, all one word. You can get your deposit bonus for up to $100. That's pretty nice, man. $100, you get 200. You'll have 200. I mean, that's pretty nice bonus, man. So make sure you check that out if you want to jump in some Underdog drafts. I haven't done it yet. I know you guys have already gone in there with it, but I haven't quite done it. But I'll be joining some puppies for sure here, and some of the big ones here, the big ball mania or whatever they call it. But all right, that's enough talk about the platforms. Let's move over here to kind of last year's data, right? So Underdog and RT Sports and all these sites, they do release their data, to us here, thankfully. And I just want to ask, what's the overall lesson you learned from reviewing the data last year? And I know Underdog's the big one that has released the data so far this year already. So we'll focus on them. Davis, what's the first lesson the lesson you learned from looking at last year's data?
I would say that right now, the big thing that people always talk about is correlations and roster construction. Last year was a really big talk, but of you got to go 2-4-10-2. You got to do, 2-5, 9-3, which meant or 5-9-2, which is heavy wide receiver. And it works in some aspects, but I think the data showed that it didn't work that much. You couldn't, you couldn't do that. When I looked at the finals rosters last year, every roster made it. Guys with 3 to 4 quarterbacks and 6 wide receivers made it. It's not necessarily the construction, it's about nailing the right picks. And that's something that gets overlooked a lot, right? We have a guy in our group that's in our DGen den, and he made it with 5 wide receivers a year before. And if I would have looked at the roster, I would have been oh, that's an ugly roster. But he won $20,000 on that roster. What am I right? What am I going to say about that guy's roster, right?
That's nice.
Clearly, it sucked.
Yeah, right. So, and I was in that same boat last year. Some of the teams that I didn't find to be that great made it. I told you, a 1,900-point team. The quarterbacks, you're going to laugh. It's Daniel Jones, Big Ben, Jameis Winston. 2 or 3 of those guys didn't even finish the season. And that team made 1,900 points. That team made it to almost the finals and only got beat out in the semis because the person that happened to be in that division with, because it's all luck at that point, was 165 points, which was way higher than the average. But if I would have made it, that would have been a $8,000 team. Based on how that scored in the finals, that would have been $8,000. So you draft, you do what you think is best, you take your stands when you can, and you would be surprised what ends up in the finals. So that's a lesson I think that's learned, and I think it's overlooked quite a bit. We always talk about you got to go this way. But I've seen the finals. There's 50 to hundreds of different looking rosters.
Yeah. I mean, I know I went heavy receiver last year, and I'll be honest, I don't play in as many tournaments as you guys do, or as many drafts as you guys do. So my teams did not do so hot. But I wasn't able to diversify as much as you really want to with these. Preston, what's the lesson you learned, man?
I think kind of going back to the point of diversification, I think, to really stress the importance of diversifying that last pick. And so a really good strategy to use that I wish I would have used more is taking your last pick and trying to draft a player that's not being drafted, right? Because, when we play DFS or something like that, it's pretty easy to find players that you can find at like very low ownership and that aren't being played by the field as much because you only have like an 8-team starting roster. You don't have a full 18 roster with bench depth and whatnot. So on Underdog, you're already kind of, or I mean, any best ball site, you're already kind of stressed on your roster to the fact that every player you're drafting is being drafted by a different team. So it's hard to kind of get unique or be contrarian like you can in DFS. But, we've seen multiple years now in a row, like some of these players that weren't being drafted at all. 2020, it was Mike Davis. Last year, we had like Cordell Patterson, we had KJ Osborne, guys who just weren't being drafted at all and who actually were, almost, if not considered league winners, if not just had some pretty solid spike weeks. So it really can separate you from the field, especially when you're playing those type of contests like Underdog or DraftKings where you have the playoff format. Because once you reach the playoffs, having, if you're the only team of the 18 teams in your league that has this player, I mean, that just separates you so much more, like let alone the finals. If you're one of 200 teams with this player, completely separates you from the field.
So, Davis, we'll start with you on this one again because you touched on the roster builds. Basically, I mean, who out of the two of you, is that what you were going for here, Joe? The two of them, who won more with?
No, just overall, in general,
whoever was playing, who won more with what type of build?
I think Preston actually outdid me on making to playoffs, and I think he actually outdid me last year when it came to just doing 12-man straight out drafts against other analysts and whatnot on the Twitter. I think me and you both, doubled our money against other analysts last year.
Nice.
Like we doubled and tripled our money. It was pretty bad. We were like, just, and we're not here to make fun, but we were like, yeah, like we do best ball and we do best ball well. I think me and him were in so many drafts with other analysts that we like completely crushed it. I think I made a lot of the money I would have lost back on other people.
Well, so, but back to more. That's actually overall fantastic to hear. But yeah, so like you talked about like the roster builds of like the teams that made it far, but and you said it was kind of all over the place, but like did you notice that like okay, at least like 20% or 25% were this type of build, or was it just absolutely just so random? It was kind of hard to extrapolate.
It was random. Like when you draft as many teams as I did, I know Preston drafted a bit less than I did, but once you start drafting in like the 500s in the 6, like your rosters are kind of all over the place. So, and that's why I figured out that at the end of the day, like the roster construction didn't matter. It was just about getting it right? Like I had teams with Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon. I was very high in Joe Mixon last year, and that went across the board. And then I went in other ones with like Rashad Penny. That they went really far. Like you never really knew. It was just about getting like certain guys, right? Like getting Cup, getting Mark Andrews correct. Like Preston said himself, he was like all on Darren Waller, and that didn't really work for him. But I was like, I'm taking all the Mark Andrews and T.J. Hawkinson, right? Like I'm being weird. So like that really worked out, but it wasn't necessarily, like I said, the construction. It's just about getting the guys, and diversification helped a lot because I think me and him actually joked we both had 11% each on Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. So half the time we were getting it right, half the time we were getting it wrong. So it's kind of like it worked out. But if you take a stand on the place, it could be better. I've seen guys that did have like 18% Cooper Kupp. And I guarantee you that 18% Cooper Kupp, 18 those teams probably all made playoffs.
I can't see how you didn't. That was pretty phenomenal. I always go back to I kind of like lucked out with Cooper Kupp last year and Scott Fish. I wanted Robert Woods and he got picked like 3 picks in front of me, and then I was like, but I want a piece of this Rams offense, and so I was like, screw it, Cooper Kupp, and I was like, well, hell, all right. I mean,
I did the same thing. It's like. Good pick. All right.
Yeah, I know. I'm a genius, damn it. I didn't get lucky at all. I don't know what I'm talking about. No, just kidding.
Like Austin Eckler is a good example of a guy that just carried so many teams.
I was all in on Eckler last year, man. That was that, but
so it's just
I was happy to have him.
Picks right. It's just not your construction. So I diversification allows you to have some teams that make it just because you picked around the board enough, and then the construction on it just means that you're mitigating, which I think we'd probably go over that topic later, but like points contribution. So that's one thing I did notice. I posted it today. I was like, want to know something funny? I was like, 3 of my picks did nothing. And it was T.Y. Hilton, Jerry Jeudy, and I think like Nico Collins. So 3 of my 7 to 8 receivers were pointless. Robert Woods contributed more than Jerry Jeudy. And Jerry Jeudy played all his games. Robert Woods played like 5. Like
Yeah,
how
that's
embarrassing
brutal.
is that, right? Like, so just getting those picks right. And it has to make sense on a team.
Yeah, so Preston, when you looked at the data from last year on Underdog, did you notice anything about the roster builds that went far, or was it just kind of random, as Davis is saying?
Yeah, so in terms of like how they actually did, like their success rate, it was, to Davis's point, things kind of just evened out. There wasn't really anything that was sticking out too much.
Okay.
All around, like kind of whether it was like 0 RB, hero RB, robust, like 4 running back builds, whatever it is, like they all kind of like flattened out and, were approaching more of like an average, which was pretty interesting to see in terms of success rate. At least there was like some things that gained more popularity too, just in terms of like usage by the field. For example, like it was pretty overhyped last year, drafting 4 running backs and stopping at 4 running backs. So that took a massive increase in utilization by the field. Kind of in turn, that small sample size turned large, performed worse this past year. But, another kind of interesting area where the field switched it up a little bit from 2020 was that more people last year were drafting only 2 tight ends versus 3 tight ends. And I think it was just kind of along the lines of there were more sharp people drafting this past year than the previous year. There were a lot of like analysts who were getting into it, just a lot more just hardcore grinders and whatnot. And whereas like traditionally kind of when you have a lot more casual players, they typically take a more balanced approach with their rosters. So they're drafting, like 3 quarterbacks, 3 tight ends, 5, 6 running backs, 6, 7 wide receivers. They don't really think about like as much, the effects of each position and the draft capital allotted to it. So it's more of like a, higher end player type thing that you start actually thinking about and considering, when should you stop at 2 quarterbacks versus, 3 quarterbacks and so on.
Yeah, that was a big thing for me, especially with Underdog last year. It was the first time that I had jumped on and done a lot of different teams and leagues, or in their league and platform. But I had, my guys that I was going after, and Waller was one and whatnot. So if I got a Waller or, I don't think I had any Kelsey, but Waller, even a Kittle, I was like, all right, I'm done until the end. And then maybe take a flyer on my last pick with a 3rd tight end. But I was pretty steadfast on going 3 quarterbacks too in a lot of my teams, just because of how many injuries we see with the quarterbacks. I mean, and just it's every year. It seems like it's worse and worse and worse, but it's just consistent that they always get injured. So that was kind of my big thing with it.
I mean, and the points contribution from like a lack of a QB is huge, right? Like that one team I told you that could have been like a $9,000 team. It just came down to just having Big Ben at the end, which is like really, really bad, right? You change Big Ben to like any other random mediocre quarterback, that team gets.
They probably could have had Kirk Cousins for around the same price last year.
I could have Derek Carr. And Derek Carr would have killed it like all day, right? Like,
better than Ben at least.
Huge difference. Derek Carr was like a finals pick last year. I think me and Preston were talking about how he was just like value down, and somebody else put it just onto him, but it was just one of those things like, like why aren't we taking 3 QBs, especially if you're going to go very late? Especially when Jared Goff actually carried people into the semis last year. He had that big game in week 15.
Yikes.
Like one random 18th round pick.
Things you never thought you'd say. Chapter 1.
And then I think when you guys are talking about tight ends, I think the tight end value was so much better last year, right? You had Mark Andrews, you had Dallas Goedert, TJ Hawkinson all in like rounds 6, 7, 8 versus Darren Waller, who was like round 2. Like,
Yeah,
he was
I was all
4-7.
in on the Waller train, man. I was
I mean,
with
I
you,
don't blame
Preston.
anyone for that, right? Like, when those other mid-tier guys that could be potential elites that go in round 8, that's great. Like, you take those, right? Like, you take Dallas Goedert this year, who's at pick 101. Like,
Yeah.
you take him. Like, it's good value. Don't shop.
Yeah.
Let's start talking about this year. So let's get into the strategy for this year. Now that we've reviewed last year, let's get into this year. So to start real quick, if you had to choose your draft slot, where would you go, Preston?
I'd probably go like 3 or 4, somewhere around there, just because it makes the choice pretty easy. It's if one of the running backs falls, as in like CMC or Jonathan Taylor, I'll take them. Otherwise, like, more than happy just go ahead and grab Cup or Chase or Jefferson and just call it a day. Makes it like pretty easy just to take who's falling or take whoever's there. But once you kind of get pushed to the middle picks, just gets much harder to decide.
So you're back in on the CMC train? I mean, I know a lot of people are scared to death of him after 2 years in a row of just disappointment.
Yeah, I'll go back. I'm back in on the CMC train.
All right,
I'll
fair
go
enough.
back to the well on him.
Davis, where is your ideal draft slot?
Oh, man, he stole mine. It's actually...
No, I mean, if it's the same, it's the same. Just
It's a little bit of both. Obviously the first 2 picks are just king. Like, it's easy, right? Like, you got to grab Jonathan Taylor, you got to grab CMC when you can. But I like the 3 and 4 because I actually like to get weird with it sometimes. If I'm drafting from the 3-4, the 4-5 so often, most of the times you're getting Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. Like, I'm just gonna say no and grab Derrick Henry, or I'm gonna grab Dalvin Cook. And then it gives me the ability to do variants. I can grab Dalvin Cook into a Saquon, into a Mike Williams, right? I really enjoyed that more so than following that line, because 104 to 108, you can grab almost anything. It's always going to be different. I know who I'm not grabbing, so I'm always good there. And then I'll also take the 112, because the 112 right now has been really fun because you can end up with Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, and you made right. Like, in this member, this is half PPR, guys. This isn't full, and I don't see any way in history right now, like, short of like some of them, the guys just vanishing off the map, where they don't get 300 touches, right? Like, how do those 2 teams win without 300 touches? And the answer is they don't. So Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry are just 2 guys that are going to guarantee you 600 touches between 2 players, and you never need to touch running back again until you need to grab their handcuffs, like Madison at 120, Damian Williams at 101, and then I'm great. I'm done. I got 4 running backs. Then I can load up a receiver at the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, and so on. So I really enjoy 112, 113. You're getting really cute there. You're getting Aaron Jones. You're getting Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry. You can reach for Saquon, which is totally fine. Saquon should be a 2nd rounder, but he's a 3rd rounder right now. So I really enjoy that turn also.
I'm afraid of Saquon. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being too careful this year. I kind of like the back end of the draft. We just recorded all those team previews, and so the last few we'll be posting here in the next couple of days here on the YouTube channel. The more I was looking at like the early rankings and the early ADP here, it's early June, so things are going to change. But after JT, like those first few running backs, right? You've got CMC, you've got Derrick Henry, you've got Dalvin Cook, you've got Eckler. I kind of don't want to pay up for them. I know they're good, but like there is so much risk that they do not return that value. Like, I kind of want the back end guys and just like double tap and just, I'll be good with, Mixon and Kamara, right? Like, you can almost get both of those guys, like, in some drafts. Like, I would love that kind of a start, when it comes to it. I probably would, mix in a receiver now and then too, but I kind of prefer the back end. I don't know, AJ, what's your thoughts with it?
I mean, I'm good wherever. I feel like with best ball, to me, you have certain guys that you want to get, and you want to get them at certain spots. So, if I'm in the beginning, then I can work with that. If I'm at the end or towards the end, I could work with that. I think the middle scares the crap out of me, though, because that's going to be the hardest. Like, well, do I reach on somebody here thinking they're not going to get back to me, or do I?
You have to
take a
reach at the
chance?
corners more than you do the middle, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like, to me, I'm good with whatever. I haven't done enough best ball to be choosy at this point, I guess. But that could change this year, so we'll find out. The next thing we want to look at, we've already kind of touched on this a bit, but for this year and knowing what we've learned from last year, what's up, Jeff?
Jeff
Pretty
Lambert.
best pulse
already. I don't know. Davis Preston,
Well
you guys got that one beat? I'm sure.
Yeah.
185.
I was like, I'm pretty sure he's got you crushed, Jeff.
I was gonna say,
85.
Davis has drafted more since the NFL draft ended.
Oh yeah, I
Brady,
forgot
so-
about like my other draft. So yeah, I'm probably going on 200.
Oh my goodness.
But I didn't draft that heavy in backyard best ball or super flex as much as I would like to. I really wanted to wait until after free agency.
Jeff, you got some work to do.
Russell Gage, Russell Gage was one of my favorite guys to pick
Wow.
up, and it worked out.
So, all right. Well, back to the topic at hand here. Knowing what we've learned from last year, what will be your typical roster build this year? What has been for your 100 and some odd drafts, 200 that you've already done? Is there a consistent build type that you've gone with, or
a more typical one, maybe.
a typical one, not necessarily like.
Preston will
Getting
make
weird
fun
this
of
way.
me. He knows. Mine's the 3573, like the safest one in town.
So explain what that means for
So
people
a
who don't know.
3573 is a 3 quarterback, 5 running back, 7 receiver, 3 tight end.
I think that's what I did a lot last year too.
It pivots a little. Like if I grab a Jalen Hurts and a Trey Lance, then it's gonna be a 2, 5, 8, 3. Or if I grab 2 tight ends, like if I grab Kyle Pitts, it becomes whatever. But it allows minor variance. It's just you compensate for whenever something lacks, and it provides a lot of nets in the sense that you're trying to contribute at every position versus having the possibility of not contributing it in one position, which is what I think killed a lot of people last year.
So I want to ask you a follow up on that one. So I feel like I did that build a bunch last year. That 2 or 3 quarterback, 5 running back, or that is 2 or 3 quarterbacks, 5 running backs, and then like 7 receivers, and then like 2 or 3 tight ends. Right?
7 receivers,
I did that a lot, and my teams didn't do all that great. Now, granted, I don't diversify as much as you, but my teams didn't do all that great. And I wonder, and I'll tell you, the biggest reason why they didn't do great is my running backs all just died. Like they all got crushed. I had a lot of CMC last year. For some reason, I kept getting the first overall pick, and I kept getting CMC, which backfired. Obviously, I had Henry in one, was doing great, and then that died. Yeah. So, is there any thought to maybe, for somebody who plays, as little as I do, is there any thought to maybe making your typical roster build, adding one more running back for kind of your lower?
I don't see anyone should be doing that. If you're doing it, you should be hedging. You should be structuring a little bit different, right? If I take Dalvin Cook, I'll take Madison, right? If you're injured, if you're worried about concern injuries, you kind of go that route. I wouldn't take. 5 running back is already kind of robust. Like I think most people will agree it's pretty robust, especially if you're drafting running back early. As much as I love drafting running back early too, to top it off. Like I'll admit, like if I have 5 running back and 3 of my top picks are those guys, you're adding any more else, you're losing value. Right now, this year specifically, there's so much good value in the middle. You're getting guys like Damian Harris at like 101, Antonio Gibson at 70, like Breece Hall at 55. You can find a lot of these like really interesting. Devin Singletary, back-to-back best ball champion winner, right? And he's at pick 110 or something ridiculous. Like you can hedge. You could hedge with Devin Singletary, James Cook for pick 107, 108. And that was the strategy I talked about last year with Zach Moss Singletary. I was like, guys, they cost you nothing. Just take them both. So if one did happen to just die, you would be good to go because the other one would be there for you. You're not hedging with like Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, where they guys were expensive. So I think 5 running backs is perfect amount. One less, one more won't kill you, but you just can't be investing too much ADP.
Yeah, I'm not talking go like 8 running backs. I'm talking
No,
maybe make it a 6 running back build for
heavy.
like.
You have to be a zero RB team to do that, and 4 robust RB team.
Yeah, that's just kind of how it is in best ball. It's just the fact of the matter is that it's a lot of it is about upside. So like in a managed league like redraft, if you draft 2 running backs early, even if you only draft 5 total or whatever, you have 3 on the bench. Just the fact of the matter is in football, running backs get injured at such a high clip. So the difference is in a managed league, you can hit the waiver wire. You can try to do everything you can to, fix the injury when it goes down. But in best ball, I mean, you can, you don't want to over prepare for injuries. Like it's just sometimes you're just going to get screwed on injuries, and that's what it is. And that's why it's like a high upside type game.
So we talked about injuries already. So I'm gonna skip a question and we'll go back to it. But since we're talking about injuries, and you mentioned, if you draft Cook, you draft Madison, right? If you're worried about it, do you guys? Maybe not all the time, but do you find yourself doing that if you take those kind of injured, like do you take a CMC? Would you take the backup there, right?
No, I typically don't. I try not to sort of fall into that. Like I'm not opposed to kind of doing what Davis was talking about, where you're taking like Cook and Singletary just based on like their cost. Their ADPs are so much lower in general, but usually, especially if I'm already taking one of the running backs, like a first couple of picks, I don't really want to handcuff them. I'd rather just aim more for the upside that I hit on someone else's handcuff, just because otherwise, like it's hard to find too many valuable handcuffs in the first place nowadays. Like like Alexander Madison's probably one of the last ones left. He's one of the last Lone Rangers out there as a good handcuff RB. Otherwise, like we just see it so much more often now that teams are just unpredictable, or they're just moving to some sort of committee once the lead back goes down. So it's too hard to like predict that you'll even get good replacement level value while also potentially just sacrificing a roster spot.
Davis, you agree or disagree with that?
No, I actually agree with Preston on that one. So I I'm short of Madison, maybe Jamal Williams. If Tony Pollard, if he would have been 50 picks later, he's
going a little early still.
But like, if you're drafting like Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon, like I just feel like you're just hurting yourself because they're so expensive. Pick 18, pick 75, right? Like you're basically spending two of your 7 top picks into this. Like it has to be it has to be very far away, and it has to be a guarantee, right? I don't want to end up in a Niles Davis situation, which, if you guys remember, when Jamal Charles went out, like everyone grabbed Niles Davis off the waivers, and it became like Charvarius Ward, and we all looked, or Kendrick West, and we all looked really dumb. so it ends up being a dead pick more than often, unless it's guys like Jamal Williams, Kareem Hunt later, or Madison. There's not a guarantee. Like, I mean, look at James Robinson; he came out of the blue.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so we have a question here from Jeff, actually. Who are your top 5 highest owned, rostered, whatever we want to call it, players at the moment? You guys probably got to pull that up, so I'll give you a second.
I got mine, because I kind of just know it. It's sad. It's DK Metcalf is like my number one. Like it's
all right.
It's gotten bad. It's probably going to be like 60-70% exposure, which is like
his value has dropped like a rock, or his ADP has dropped. So I get it. Oh yeah, I mean,
followed by Damian Harris, Gerald Everett is making the cut. A lot of Tua and a lot of Trevor Lawrence. I really like those guys in their position right now. They cost you nothing. They can score on the ground if they have to, which is going to happen with Trevor Lawrence, I think, more than Tua. And they're just so cheap, man. Like, and I think Damian Harris right now is like the best value running back. Like last year, I've
seen a lot of tweets about him. Yeah,
I called Melvin Gordon last year. Got a lot of hate for it. And Damian Harris is just Melvin Gordon again. He's just going to be a guy that like plods his way into your RB2 or flex randomly, right? Yeah. Like if you ask yourself every week, can Damian Harris get me 60 yards on a touchdown? And the answer will be yes, every week. That's what he can do.
He likes your Tua call.
Yeah.
All right, so back to the question at hand. Preston, do you got your numbers up yet?
Hold on. I was trying to. I compiled something at one point or another to like combine all the different contests into one.
Oh,
Yeah, because they're split.
oh, right. They
That's
they break it. They break it down. Yeah, but
Yeah. No, I'm not. Okay.
let's see. Yeah,
So,
just get what you can. It's
I'm just
fine.
gonna have to go off my my highest volume draft, which is actually
Sure.
from the pre NFL draft. But wouldn't change anything about these exposures at least. But there were better values back then. The first one is David Njoku.
right.
Number 2, Gus Edwards. 3 is Nico Collins. 4 is Kenyon Drake, and 5 is Kenneth Gainwell.
Is this last year?
Damn,
Nico Collins
agent.
is my-
Shots fired.
Just kidding. Just kidding. I love the
Shots.
Gainwell pick, honestly.
You just gotta
Phillies
go back to
fan,
the
yeah.
wall.
He was awesome last year. I mean, he was like the definitive best ball player because you got him for nothing last year, or probably no one even had him, but he put together like strings of games that were worthwhile and were probably playable. So
Yeah, he had some nice spike weeks. I just wish those. I think when Miles Sanders like actually went down later in the season, then they were trying too hard to rely on Jordan Howard and whatnot. I wish they would have given him actually more work in, but
they should have. And that's a whole different conversation for a different show. But all right, so I lost my thing here. Oh, there it is. All right, so we've talked about that, but what about bye weeks? I mean, do you guys even factor this in at all? I mean, in a redraft league or a keeper league or standard, typical scoring head to head, you could set up a roster where bye week you have everybody on 1 week and whatever. How does that differ for best ball though? Do you avoid
I think
certain players?
Yeah, I mean, you want to consider them at least, but they're not too big of a deal, right? Like it's fine if you have 3 or 4 wide receivers with the same bye week. It's not going to kill you. Like at the end of the day, you just want to make sure, like if you only draft 2 quarterbacks, like probably try to aim that both of them don't have the same bye weeks, just because you're automatically sacrificing 1 week that you're not going to have any points. Like even if it's a bad week from the from the quarterback that you have available, I'd rather take the 2 bad weeks that you have the quarterbacks playing separately while the other one's on their bye week versus potentially getting a solid week when the 2 of them are together, and then you take a 0 the next week when they're both on bye, if that makes sense. But even if they're playing it like 4 weeks when the other one's on a bye, you're probably sacrificing less points than just taking the 0 on both their bye weeks.
Davis, do you agree with that?
As Preston said, I personally try to avoid it. So this year, I really hate week 9. Like week 9 kind of just annoys me. Week 10 is pretty annoying too. And the guys I wrote down for week 9, these are the ones that come off the top of my head, right? It's Najee, Chubb, Gordon, Saquon.
There's a lot.
And here's the thing, those are all players that most guys kind of like, right? Like Najee, Chubb, Gordon, Saquon, and Zeke are really likely to end up on many teams. And now that you have these 2, you're sacrificing a lot of points, right? And if they're quarterback versions of it, you're losing 20 points a week for whenever if you have nothing going on. I'm really about points contributions, especially when luckily this year, these last 2 years, the Underdog has allowed people to make it with the top 2 teams. But when you're in a top 1 team only, you would be surprised how close the number 1 and 2 teams are sometimes. 20, 30 points can be the difference when you make your money back or you're waiting until next year.
Yeah.
So I do pay attention to my bye weeks, especially on my heavy hitters. And I will draft to compensate, right? Like I will force a Damian Harris. I will force a third QB, a third tight end. Maybe not a third tight end, but those 2 positions, I will definitely force a guy in to make sure I get points that week.
So I small follow up on this one. What about, and because I don't know the exact weeks, I haven't studied it yet, but there's some late bye weeks this year. We're talking week 13 and week 14. Does Underdog or RT Sports like do their playoffs, if you want to call it? Yeah, because that's what it is, right? Do their playoffs happen during those weeks?
So they start the last week, or I guess the week after bye week.
So 15?
So,
15,
yeah, you'll be
So
cleared.
15, 16, 17. Okay. So you don't have to factor that in. Okay.
I did have a team that lost out though because they had too many week 14 guys and they didn't put up enough points, the leftovers, and actually missed the playoffs on a team because of that.
yikes.
It was like missed by like 15 points or something.
I mean, same thing could have happened in week 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever. It just happened the last week, which kind of stunk.
Yeah.
So,
If you have too
that's
many though, you go from a point range of like
Oh, of
average
course.
should be 1 to 120. I think that week I had 65. So I was way below average, and that really killed me. Like, it killed me bad.
That's pretty brutal. Yeah. So you need to be aware of it. It's not you draft around. You don't draft. Strategize around the bye weeks, but it is something you need to pay attention to make sure you don't have 10 of your roster spots all sharing the same bye week, because it's going to kill you. So I totally get that. All right, let's move over here to some player evaluation here, and just real quick, give your thoughts on how you value players, right? Whether it be like say floor, boom, bust guys, like how do you value these guys, and how do you prefer them, type of thing? Like, Preston, you go first.
Yeah, so I think first of all, in best ball, sometimes people will sort of underrate floor players to a certain extent. Like, you have to be careful of the players that are like only putting up a consistent 10 points a week, but they don't have to always be some sort of boom or bust player. Like, some people will just argue that you need, ceiling or get out. But I think, every good team needs a couple of nice floor players. But in general, I'm always going after the more volatile boom bust guys in general in best ball. Like, I have to like kind of retrain my brain when I go play like redraft or something like that to like not take these sort of like high volatile guys that I'm like always drafting in best ball, because I don't care. Like, I'm not worried about start sitting them. But I think going after those guys who have a high ceiling, and like Davis was talking about earlier with DraftKings, like those guys that will hit the bonus, maybe 3 or 4 times a season even, but just those massive spike weeks do matter, because it's cumulative points either way. Like, even just to make it to the playoffs and Underdog, you're counting on a cumulative score through the first 14 weeks.
Davis, what's your thought on that topic?
So this is that point of I was talking about points contributed. And this is why I think last year, Joe, when we were talking about like, hey, how good is Jarvis Landry, right? I think we had this conversation like, is Jarvis Landry a great pick? And I remember like I completely just hated it. And he's kind of a thing, and hopefully I get to this article one day that I get to do. He's exactly the epitome of someone I don't like taking when they're expensive, but I don't mind taking when they're cheap, as Preston was saying. Like, these floor guys are really nice because they get you 9 points, 10 points a week. But it's a lot different than full PPR. Half PPR is a totally different set of scoring when you look at the grand scheme. So, like, I call it the Jarvis Landry line. Like, will this guy contribute points? And if the answer is no, I tend not to draft them unless, like, it's a bottom-end guy with possibly, like, Jameis Crowder right now is value town. Jarvis Landry this year is value town, right? But there's a difference between Jarvis Landry at pick 150 and Jarvis Landry at pick 90, right? Like, where I could get somebody that could, Mike Williams last year, who could get me randomly 60 yards on a touchdown on one catch, and he contributes. He contributes every week. I think he contributed 8 games last season, something ridiculous for how much he costed, right? So I do like grabbing floor guys, but they have to be at the bottom, or the ceiling guys at the bottom. It has to really be balanced. I can't grab a team of slot receivers. I can't grab a team of whatever, because 126 points gained and 0 points contributions is 0 points contribution. And that's how your roster will look like. So if anyone has a chance to go look at their old teams, look at the results, and you're going to go like, wow, this guy really was a dead pick for me. And you see it more often than not. So those kind of, I will try to.
Oh yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, so they had that many points in the season, but they never actually scored for
Yeah,
you.
they
So
didn't.
I get what you're saying now.
So, like, last year,
that kind of went over my head for a second there. I was like, what are you talking about? Oh,
Yeah.
now I know.
It's something
It
that's
just
completely missed.
hit me.
Yeah, it's completely missed.
That's the
in
120
best ball
talking,
world.
by the way.
So it's-
As he hits his microphone.
What you
So
say?
good job. So we got a couple questions here,
hit
or we got a question here. Another one. Green Screens Media. I'm with paying. Upside late. Yeah, get
I
it.
can grab a slot guy at the end. It's fine, but like
Yeah.
I'm not grabbing 4 of them.
Do you have a question from Jeff here? So, in large field tournaments, do you build some off the wall teams just to be different? We kind of touched on this earlier, but that's cool. We can answer because I think, Jeff, you weren't here earlier. Nothing crazy, but for example, do you take Jamar Chase 101? So, Davis, I think you were the one that kind of talked about this. Maybe I think we might have actually been talking before the show. Now that I'm thinking about it, but
I personally wouldn't do that. I feel like you get 101 so little that you can't get weird with it. I would say if you had somebody ranked higher, then the consensus 101, that's fine. But you get so little of it that you can't. I mean, you can do that at 103. You can get Jamar Chase at 103 and it'll be almost the same exact effect as 101. So I think you can get away by doing that at the 103, 104, 105. I think that's what Preston was talking about before, why he likes that position, because you can get kind of funny. You can skip Cooper Kupp and grab Justin Jefferson. You know, you can do something like that. I would never do 101.
So with the 1-1-1-2, you're pretty much locked in with JT and CMC.
Yeah, you definitely want
maybe
that
not
exposure.
CMC, but I 101 I'm locked. 102, 103, 104, I'll mix it up. If I got 102
Yeah.
enough times, I'm not going to grab CMC. I'll grab Justin Jefferson. Because
Fair
maybe
enough.
I
Yeah.
want that weird, like I said, that Saquon, Justin Jefferson, Leonard Fournette team. But maybe
Yeah,
I
it's just not worth giving up, JT at the 101 or, whatever it is, just because, like, kind of like Davis was getting at, like, when you're sitting at picks 3, 4, and 5, like, you can get enough Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson that you can be overweight on them still without having to do something, as crazy as taking them at the 101. So,
Yeah, I mean, if I was lucky enough to get a 101, it's got to be JT all the way. Mostly because I'm out on CNC. So, all right. So we talked about some safe floor, boom bust guys, some ceiling guys. What about rookies? How are you guys valuing the rookies this year for best ball? Preston, go for it.
yeah, so, I'm definitely, I would be, tempering my expectations with some rookie QBs based on how last year went. But I mean, they're all bad anyway, so it doesn't really matter there. But,
Yeah.
in general, I'm definitely a fan of rookies, especially like rookie wide receivers or kind of more of those late round rookie running backs, because, like we talked about, like we play a lot of underdog. And so the format really kind of lends itself to the general rookie process where, you can survive by not really getting much regular season or much like, first half of the season production out of the rookie. But then if they sort of come on towards the end, like, think about Amon St. Brown from last year, where he kind of later in the season, last half, he really took off from there. That really helps you out come playoffs time. So like once you actually make it to the playoffs, the rookies then develop. They've earned their time in the field. They've gotten used to the system. So it all kind of meshes together well and kind of forms a good upside case there.
All right. Davis, any thoughts on the rookies?
I'll never draft a rookie QB. I'll never do it. I hate it. I wrote a whole segment last year on our website about how like you had to be perfect to be good. And I think it was Baker Mayfield. I was like, you have to be Baker Mayfield rookie year, which is the best besides Justin Herbert, and that's the average of the best, or RG3, right? Like,
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
crazy.
forgetting one, but that was years
section.
ago.
And how many rookies we get that do that, right? Like
It's not
none.
often.
So in the last year, those guys were drafting Trey Lance at pick like 100, Trevor Lawrence at pick 100, and I remember just like going like, "This is dumb. This is absolutely dumb." You can get Derek Carr 120 picks later at 220, which paid out like way better, right? Like I just found that real. I'll never do it. Wide receivers though, totally different story. Running back, totally different story. I had so much nausea last year. Wide receivers, I can see it. If if the quarterback is someone you trust, if the team is good enough, like Chris Olave, like with Winston, if someone told me they liked him, I wouldn't be mad. I'd be like, yeah, go grab that, because I could see that being more viable than Kadarius Toney. I might take Tony, but if someone took Olave over Tony, I'm not mad. It makes sense. So rookies and skill positions all day, short of maybe tight end. Kyle Pitts kind of proved why it wasn't so great last year.
Yeah.
But he wasn't bad still, just needed a little bit more touchdowns. So I'm okay with it. It's just QBs, I'll never do it. You're asking for like such a death sentence when you take a rookie quarterback.
It's hard. It's tough. It is tough. I mean, even the can't miss Trevor Lawrence missed. Not totally his fault, but we know.
Round 18, that's cool, but these guys were inflated. Everyone was trying to catch Justin Herbert 2.0 last year.
Yeah.
Like, that was terrible.
I avoided all of them last year. Still didn't help me, but I avoided them.
So let's meet my goal.
Yeah. I'll tell you one strategy, by the way, that I totally forgot to say it before we moved on here. One strategy, and AJ can agree with this: never draft in the car on the way back from the Fantasy Football Expo when you're super hungover.
No, hungover.
We were literally like, AJ was driving, and I was like, let's do a draft. Bling, and I was like, oh my god, what am I doing? Nightmare. It was fun, but I'm pretty sure that team was probably the worst team.
That
anyway,
team was bad.
So who are some players that you guys are fading at their values right now? And Davis, you can start this one off.
Right off the bat, AJ Dillon is someone I'm just not taking much of. He's funny enough a best ball championship winner back-to-back years too, just like Devin Singletary. But I think if you value Aaron Jones, you can't value AJ Dillon as hard, especially at, just as early as he is, right? Like once you start triple digits ADP, you're fine, but he's like mid-70s.
Especially in Underdog, right? I mean, it's full PPR.
No.
Oh, is it a half? Yeah. So it's I guess okay. So I should really say the other ones, RT and the other ones, they're all full. So he's even more of a fade there.
Yeah.
But
so AJ Dillon, Christian Watson is pretty expensive. Just Green Bay as a whole, kind of painful. I'm not sold on the Broncos as wide receiver core like Jerry Jeudy, and definitely not taking Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas is so expensive. I'd rather have DeAndre Hopkins.
I'm off. Yeah. Whoa. Yeah. I mean, I don't.
A suspension. I know where he's
and he's suspended. Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Michael Thomas. I have no idea he's coming back or not.
Yeah, we just don't know.
Yeah, Davis is definitely pretty exhausted after drafting so much Michael Thomas last year.
It cost me so many lineups. He made it to my finals though. I think he made it to the finals with me.
Every time a new injury report came out, like in a negative manner about Michael Thomas, I think Davis went and drafted Michael Thomas. Like for every single bad thing, Davis had Michael Thomas.
I had quite a bit of Michael Thomas last year too, and that burned me pretty bad. I was like, he'll be fine. Nope.
I don't know. I don't know if I did have him. Maybe like one or two, but it was late. It's like, why not? All right, so. That being said, then
Preston, what are yours? Sorry, we didn't get Preston's.
Who are your fades?
Yeah, I think my biggest fade right now is probably Tim Patrick. He's going like right around ADP of 120, so like kind of 10th or 11th pick. I think people are just too, in general, like high on Russ being in Denver, just in the fact that like there's only so much to go around to everyone. You have you have Sutton, you have Judy, you have both running backs, you have Alberto and the rookie tight end, and you also have KJ Hamler too. So like Hamler being there alone, I don't think it solidifies that Tim Patrick's even the wide receiver 3. And even if he is the wide receiver 3, like he might be the 4th or 5th option, and that's fine. Like you don't have to completely avoid that player in best ball. Like that's fine for spike weeks, but that should be like a second to last or last round pick type of player. That shouldn't be someone you're using a 10th or 11th round pick on.
Yeah. the other thing too with Judy and this groin injury, or is that like come and gone already? Or are we just not
Probably
even
gonna
really
be
worried
around for a
about
little while, but
I mean, I feel like
it's June, early
it's-
June right now.
it's
So
worrisome to a point, but yeah, Tim Patrick is, he's come in and he's had great success for a few weeks at a time as an injury replacement, but this year is definitely going to be different, I think. So moving on from fades and looking at just guys that are gaining value, more of your later round picks. Preston, who are you looking at more in the later rounds, or that you see as value there?
Yeah, so I think one of my favorite ones, kind of going back to the whole rookie players, I think it's going to be Romeo Dubs with Green Bay. I just like the idea of how could be wide open that wide receiver room is. Like, we've kind of seen enough of Lazard. He could step up, maybe not. Like, we've already had reports about Christian Watson, and he kind of already was like a raw prospect to begin with. And in all honesty, like, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Dubs could be like the wide receiver one in Green Bay. Like, it's definitely in the range of outcomes. But really, even at the worst case, him being like the third option, or third or fourth option even, on an efficient offense with an elite QB, like, I'll definitely take that as my last pick every time.
Okay,
Davis.
There's quite a couple of them. My final picks, Nico Collins is, no, it's not. Me and Preston always talk about Nico Collins. Nico Collins is like a guy for me. He's one of the few players that, like, last year that the Texans traded up for, right? A team that was tanking traded up for you. That sounds crazy to me, which is great, right? John Mechie's another. I kind of want all of that Texans wide receiver, not the tight end and not the running back situation too much. Maybe Marlon Mack, because he is so cheap. But, like, they're just costing you pick, 16, 17, 18? Like, you can draft all three of them at the end, and you're like, I got a stack, right? That isn't Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks is a little injury prone at times and still a stud. Like, he's at a great value. People are saying he's a little overpriced, but I think he's exactly where he needed to be, because he was going so late. He was going, like, behind Chris Olave. Like, come on, let's talk, or behind Sky Moore at one point. So
that rookie inflation, I love
exactly.
it.
So, like, he's at a perfect price, but you can get this stack, like, 16, 17, 18, like John Mechie, Nico Collins, Davis Mills. Like, this is going to be fine. Guys that could get randomly a touchdown on a random week with 60 yards on a team that's probably going to play from behind every game. So, like, sign me up. And then Tyler Lockett, he's getting further away from where he should be. I think he's like wide receiver 40 something. I didn't like him much last year, but he's not terrible. Like, you're getting a wide receiver guy that's most likely going to finish in the wide receiver 2 to 3 column at wide receiver 45, right? Like, Drew Lock, Geno Smith, whoever it is, it's fine. I don't care. Tyler Lock is.
It won't be Drew Lock. Maybe for like 4 games.
Either way, Geno Smith targeted him 14 times one game. Like, you don't want that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't seem like it's too crazy to me. And then Corey Davis and Van Jefferson. Like, those guys just get lost randomly and get a touchdown every single time, and they will cost you nothing. So if you like upside plays, like, give me those guys, and they're easy to stack. Matthew Stafford's kind of cheap for a Super Bowl quarterback, so Corey Davis is still getting paid, and he's no longer the one, but that's okay. Van Jefferson is still the 3, where he fits best at. He sucked as a 2 last year. He sucked when he took over Odell Beckham's spot, but now he's playing the 3 again. He's gonna get lost in the backfield, one and done. So sign me up for that guy too.
What about some of these Jacksonville receivers? I kind of wonder, like, if you're liking the bounce back from Lawrence, like Jones, Chenault.
So much Christian Kirk and, like, so much Evan Ingram right now. It's kind of bad. And I do randomly add Marvin Jones and Zay Jones as my other random final picks.
You don't like Chenault anymore?
I don't take Chenault. I didn't like Chenault last year. I got coerced into him, and I kind of regretted getting coerced into him.
All right.
Talk to him, so I was like, you know what? Maybe you're right. He is good. And then it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
I want Marvin Jones. The money's still there for him. I want Zay Jones. The money's there for these guys that randomly, like I said, they're just deep shot guys, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Zay Jones is. I mean, he's got speed. He can do things, but it's very little at a time. I feel like. He just hasn't shown his full potential. I think.
Yeah,
But I'm still not buying.
I'm not sure he will in Jacksonville either, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
all right, guys. Well, that is it for the best ball show. I want to thank you for coming on. This was great information, and I mean, we could probably do this for another hour if we really wanted to. Like, there's so much to talk about with best ball, but gotta cut it off, unfortunately. But Davis, before we let you bounce, let everybody know where they can find you, what you got going on this year, man. And by the way, I want to shout out to you on this podcast with you here. If you guys have not seen the team previews that we got on the YouTube channel, you have to check them out. Don't listen to us. I don't care. Just watch the first 30 seconds. Davis's intros that he made for those videos are amazing. They're better than me and whoever else was my guest. But thank you, Davis, for doing those. Those were awesome. And but again, let everybody know where they can find you and what you got going on this offseason, man.
You can find me here on Bang Six Pack, right? I write articles only for you guys. It's the group that I write for. It's been good times. Catch me on Twitter at PangsPixFF, and yeah, I like doing the intros. They were fun. It was a great practice, and I would do it all over again. Especially in the Noel. It was fun.
We will hopefully get you to make some intros for all the podcasts that we got on the YouTube channel. So look forward to more awesome stuff from Davis on our channel here. But have a good night, Davis. Thank you for coming on, man.
All right. Thanks,
Preston, what you same thing, man. Where can we find you? What you got in store for us, man?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Twitter over at ff_engineer_. You can also always find me on the Underdog lobbies. I'm always there usually doing some drafts. But other than that, I'm trying to get back into grinding some more of the data from this past year. So I'll have some more of that content coming up as we move through the summer and whatnot. Absolutely.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, man. Thank you for coming on again, and have a good night.
All right, thanks, Preston.
Have a good one, guys.
All right, AJ, that is it. We're at about an hour 6, so we can kill it there.
Time to kill it.
Next week, if I can get my screen to respond with me right now. So next week, we're jumping into our division previews. We're doing the AFC East, and we got Mr. Troy King joining us. So June 16th will be a very fun show with Troy King, a good friend of ours, man. I like him. So, all right, AJ, I think that's all from me. You got anything else to add?
Nah, I'm good.
All right, man. Enjoy, and somehow I finished this, so that's gonna be fun later.
Yeah, somehow. Oh, God.
That's
twist my arm.
That's gonna. I'm gonna. I'll be feeling that one in about a half hour, I'm sure. But good night, everyone.